This is Jesse Hensley.
And this is Josh Turner.
Welcome to Turn Down for What?
Alrighty, welcome back to Turn Down for What? Today we have a very unique episode. We're going to kind of take a little bit different of a structure today. We're going to start with our guest on the line. We have Jacob from Huntsville, Alabama. Are you there?
I am.
Awesome. So we were kind of dialoguing around some of the stuff that we wanted to talk about today with the news, and then some of the stuff that Jacob, has with expertise with the vehicle that he drives, which we'll talk about in a minute. And it seemed like a lot of it kind of meshed together. So we decided today that we would rope our guest in from the start, and we were going to kind of go through the news and some of the pieces and kind of dialogue around that together.
Yep, so I'm an old creepy guy that in the parking lot, when you see a Lucid Air, he puts his business card and begs people to try to call him, and that's kind of how we got this guest here. I was charging in Bristol, which is near where we live, and I saw a Lucid Air charging, and that was the first time that I could actually get my hands on one. I didn't mess with it, but I drooled profusely all over the window, so that was me. Sorry about that. And obviously, we want to have somebody on the show that owns a Lucid, and it's took a little while because of timing, but that's basically what we got today. And so what type of Lucid do you have? What is your package?
So I have the Zenith Red Grand Touring trailer.
Okay.
And then the one you saw in Bristol was a loaner. And that was a Grand Touring Performance that we had for about 2 months.
Gotcha. So that was not your primary vehicle.
No, that was the loaner.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
And you had that while the repairs were being done?
Yes. There was an issue with my battery pack and issue with the towing incident. So they had to fix my car for about 2 months. And it took a while to get parts and everything else.
Yeah. Seems like on some of the niche EVs, there's some part delays on certain aspects. But yeah, absolutely.
I would have drove that loaner like I stole it, though. Especially the performance. You'd have seen it at every racetrack. I would have tried it out at every drag strip. So
where are the tires all the way down?
Yeah, it'd be bald. So,
all right. So Jesse, start us off with news.
All right. So right now in Munich, you have the car show going on, big car show, and the big key here now is when you compare cost of vehicles today here in America and in Europe versus that of the Chinese automakers, it's apparent that we are vastly overpriced when it comes to affordability for people to get into the EV market. This is aside from the fact that the infrastructure is just now getting built out for these vehicles. But when you look at some of the numbers that's coming out of that car show, it's even more apparent. So BYD, which is Build Your Dreams. We talked about that car company in the past. That is Berkshire Hathaway has interest in that one as well, along with Xpeng and then Leap Motor Technology, which is bringing out 5 new models that will be for overseas markets in this upcoming year or two. And Europe is targeted for that market. But when you look at the numbers, right now, the average Chinese-built EV is around 32,000 euros or about $35,000. And that's compared to 56,000 euros for the European model. So you see a vast difference in the price between the two of them. And including this year at that auto show, you had 41% of the people there that were the exhibitors, they were based in China. So now 40% of your entire Munich car show, which is your global big national car show, is Chinese market. So I think that's one thing to kind of take from this. And in our, with Josh and I, in our venture into the EV charging and then the EV infrastructure, we are looking at large batteries and for storage. And we can kind of contest also that the battery systems we found that are the most affordable come from China, and it's a huge margin between them. We're looking 40 to 50% cheaper than our other options, which is difficult, but it also shows that their capacity to make batteries may be the reason that you're looking at $20,000 difference between the two models. And what's that going to do for the national, push or the international push? It seems to me like you won't be able to afford anything other than these models. And I don't even know, is BYD in the United States? I've never looked at that.
No.
Okay.
As of right now, they're only external.
Okay, and I think, they're probably going to be the first to come into the market out of these 4 or 5 that's showing. But what are we going to do with that? How can we get the price down other than make those batteries here? Tesla's trying that, and even their Model 3 that was around this price range has went up to, $45,000 now for the base model?
Yeah.
So
And they've dropped their higher end trims down
Yeah.
pretty significantly. But I mean, their range right now is basically 40 to 80 is
Yeah.
pretty much all their vehicles.
which is close to the 32,000 euro. I mean, that's $35,000. So Model 3 is close to that. So I'd say that Tesla's the best financially viable to hit that mark. But is it because of battery cost? Is that, and I think that this auto show is kind of showing the switch that China is looking more of the EV sector, and are they going to be able to take over that in Europe? Because United States manufacturers would have a more difficult time going to Europe if the Chinese version is $20,000 or $30,000 less than what we could produce.
Yeah, and that's something I was talking with Jacob about in our lead up conversation was, all of the vehicles with range right now in the United States cost pretty much over $100,000. Jacob, you were saying that there was one trim of the Lucid, correct, that is around 80 that had like 450-mile range. Is that right?
Correct. And don't quote me because they've been running a deal, but I believe the rear-wheel drive, which is supposed to be announced next month or produced, whatever they're doing, is 77,000, and then the all-wheel drive, I think, is sitting with the deals at 84, and that gets you about 425 miles of range, give or take.
Yeah, and I was reading an article that one of the government relations people at Lucid had shared, saying that Lucid is looking to produce in the next year or two a competitor to the Tesla down in the $50,000-$60,000 price range. But it's a viable thing. I mean, we have talked about this multiple times, on the podcast, is that, we need vehicles that have quicker charging and longer range. But usually the exchange that you're seeing with the vehicles that we've discussed, the GMC Hummer, some of the trucks that they're dropping, the Escalade IQ, is larger battery packs. And what comes with larger battery packs is more expense. And so, I mean, we're seeing that these vehicles are just not affordable for the average driver. The government is making a big push for nationwide adoption of EVs, and they're putting all this money into infrastructure and developing and encouraging adoption. But the reality is that the average car consumer can't buy a $100,000 vehicle. And, in order to get, you can go buy a $30,000, Nissan Leaf or something like that will have a 200-mile range and, maybe be able to get that at an affordable price. But the reality is getting anything that's actually, good for long distance, and otherwise, you're going to end up dealing with a pricing condition. And I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago when we were discussing the Escalade. It's a beautiful vehicle and all the bells and whistles, and it's a niche. And I mean, I love it. It's great. But, it's one of those things that not everybody can buy a $150,000 SUV.
Well, even the horror stories right now of people who buy a used EV and then have a battery module that goes out, and then they have to have a $20,000 battery put in it. Well, that's, I hate that luck for them. Hopefully that gets better, but that also means that the used cars that's coming into the market are not going to be able to be as affordable that way, because if you barely afford a vehicle and you have to pay $20,000 for an EV that's used with 80,000 miles, and then it's out of warranty, you lose a module, now you got another $20,000 to put into it, or $18,000. It makes it very difficult to be able to say that vehicle is, I mean, for most people, that means that car has been totaled, so maybe there's insurance companies that can offer an insurance like the repair insurances that would allow EVs to be under that. I think Ford has different modules to where it's not the whole battery pack. They can go in and change the module, but that's still expensive. So hopefully that technology allows for quicker and cheaper changes of that. But it also means that what is the future of that vehicle? Is it a throwaway vehicle at 100,000 miles? Most vehicles are throwaway now 300,000 miles, you throw them away anyway. So are the cars today that are EV making it to 300? And, you hear most of the people who have had problems. I don't know. I've seen several Teslas that's 500,000, 600,000. So with minor repairs during their lifespan. So it could also mean the person that's running it, but that has nothing to do with the, Toyota Camry that gets 600,000 miles if you do the maintenance on the same transmission. Everybody knows it's a bulletproof vehicle. Toyota is great for that. There's other European car companies that you don't want to talk about because they, a 5-year-old car and you can find it for $9,000 because you're going to have electrical problems from the day you get it, and you have 20 grand you have to spend on it, which is why it's not that affordable. So I think that's the other part of it, is when you start getting into the market of used vehicles, what is it going to do to everybody who has to buy that secondary market? Now they can't even afford that because they have to buy a huge battery or a big cost on top of it. So I think there's definitely some growing pains there that we have to get out of.
I think that, we discussed this a couple weeks ago, and I think I mentioned it again last week, but we're at the beginning of technology, the evolution of that technology, and we have to see rapid improvement in that. And like we discussed multiple times with the TVs, unless we see a world in which those become, the battery packs and things become more highly manufactured and lower cost, that's the only way that we're going to be able to drive down the overall cost of the vehicles and make it more affordable in general.
Yep.
Jacob, share us your thoughts.
I mean, there's a lot of efforts, particularly on the Tesla end, of right to repair. And I've read articles over the years of shops replacing exactly that, smaller modules that cost a fraction of the price. Typically, if it's a big battery pack, it's usually only a couple batteries or a module that goes bad that ruins it. So, and that's a concern, I think, for many companies as they're putting it together. But when the battery lasts, I mean, if they're rated for 300,000 miles, I've heard, I think is what Lucid quotes,
Mm-hmm.
You can potentially flip it, right? If there's enough reliability and someone buys an $80,000 mile used car, suddenly they can go a whole lot farther if the reliance is there for a whole lot cheaper without, say, major engine repairs or maintenance for the equivalent gas car. Typically around that 120, 150, 150,000 mile mark. It's typically when you see it in a lot of gas cars.
Yeah, and I've seen that too. I've had friends with diesel, and they've got 70, 80,000 miles using it the normal way with no upgrades or anything like that, and they've had to turn around and buy a brand new engine for their truck, and it's another $20,000 right there that you didn't expect, and you expected it to go 180, 100 to 200,000 miles, but I think that's definitely the direction that kind of needs to be considered, and you got less moving parts in an EV. So maybe that as we get some of these areas and you have some time on them, it's going to allow people to future-proof the areas that are weak within the vehicles. So hopefully that's an area that we're going into now. So many car companies building EVs.
Yeah, and I think that we're looking at, when it comes to the reliability of the longevity, if a lot of people will gawk at the fact that a battery pack costs $25,000, and obviously that is high, and I think that in the next 10 years we'll see that price drop. But for Ford, I just for the sake of it, my truck, I hit a deer. I took it to the shop. They had the parts list that they could order from, and I asked them, what is the cost of an extended range battery pack replacement if it was damaged? And I think their number was something like 27,000. But in a world, let's just say, and I was curious, so I just looked it up, but in a world that you're dealing with, let's say a gas powered car goes 300,000 miles and, needs basically a total replacement in order to keep driving. I was looking at the cost of certain vehicles, the amount of maintenance required on average for belts, plugs,
Everything,
engine maintenance, oil, how much does an average vehicle take to maintain over the first 150,000 miles?
I would say you're looking a good $5,000.
So they said for the cost for the first 150,000 miles, the most expensive ones being like a Ford Mustang.
Okay, yeah, basic. Yeah.
150,000 miles is $27,000
wow.
in maintenance.
Okay.
Some of the least expensive, like a Toyota Prius, is down to like 7,000. That's the cheapest maintenance one that they have out there per this review on yourmechanic.com. But on average, it was saying that like it was going over some of the make and models, and they were basically saying that like Hondas and Lexus and Hyundai, on average, for the cost of the first 150,000 for the least maintenance required would be about 15,000. But if you go down to Cadillac, BMW, Dodge, Chrysler, they're all 23 to 25,000 at 150,000 miles.
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity for somebody to have that maintenance contract to where you pay, $5 a month for X amount of years, or $10 a month, whatever it is, and that's what would go into an insurance program for your particular battery. Then they can take that battery and then make it, refurb it, basically take it out and have it refurbed for you, and then do a battery swap for you on that. I think there's a way there to make that, and everybody's still the same. But, the big thing now is kind of getting into the key part of today, which is talking about the Lucid. But I have two other items. We're going to talk about Ford because that's my favorite, obviously, because I'm a big Ford guy. But they did announce that they have a truck that is going dark. So they're going to take their F-150 Lightning Premium, or that would be their Platinum series, would be the premium. So it's the Platinum Black Edition. So it's a full blacked out version with a smoked headlight and everything for the F-150.
It looks pretty sharp.
Yeah, it looks good. And I believe it even has a matte finish. I have to confirm that. So
it looked like it did.
It looks mean. And then they also announced a couple days ago that the term F200 has come out, and everybody is speculating that is a more powerful version of the Lightning, or it might be the F-250 version for hauling, and it has a much greater capacity. They've not released details of it yet.
Have they confirmed it's actually an electric vehicle, or is that speculation?
I think it's speculation, but I believe that it is in the electric range. I doubt it's a hybrid or anything like that. So
they have the F-150 and the 250, but they just basically did something with the F-200.
Yeah. So and when you go into history of Ford, it's always been a 150, except for the early part of like the 1950s. You had the F-100 and the F-200s, I think. I know the F-100s because I have a friend of mine has a wonderful black one. So yeah, that's interesting to keep with that, to find out what that F-200 is and find out why I want it instead of what I have, because I already want one. Now we get to talk about the Lucid, what it's like to own that vehicle. Have you ever had another EV other than this one?
No, this was our first one, but I've test driven a couple other EVs as a separate thing for maybe renting cars out. But this is our first.
And what do you think?
I mean, it's a fantastic vehicle. We bought one, and it was, I don't know, maybe the first, within the first batch of 2,000 or 3,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we expected issues. The issues haven't been that bad. And when they do occur, Lucid has taken care of us. So aside from those, the car's been fantastic. It's comfortable, as you would expect. The storage has been the big surprise, particularly as we have two kids, right? So without buying a minivan or an SUV, it's hard to get the same amount of storage in anything else.
That's what I hate about it, though. It has the bucket seats in the back. I was hoping they could do a bench because I have 3 kids, so it kind of ruins it for me. So
they have a bench in the back.
Oh, they do got a bench. Okay, I thought they had the buckets.
And many owners have put 3 car seats in the back.
Yeah, because you can tell it's wider than most cars.
Yeah, it seems like it has a good width to it. Do you have good frunk storage in the Lucid?
Yes, I don't know the official numbers, but I mean, let's say we never run out of space. It's hard to run out of space in the car for storage, particularly when the kids are small. We can utilize the footwells in the back.
Yeah.
But but it's massive. I mean, the storage in the car is massive, regardless of whether it's the front, the trunk, the rear seat, the front room. There's just so much space in the car.
Yeah, which is awesome. I mean, my wife was driving. She has to drive a minivan, but we have 3 kids. But when you have multiple kids, it's very difficult to deal with storage with all the activities that kids have to do. But we've discussed that before. Our EVs, have frunks, and that in and of itself is a gigantic difference maker when it comes to storage. Just because you can compartmentalize. I mean, I have a truck with a big storage in the back, but you can haul in the back and you can put groceries in the front. And I mean, there's just it's a good multi-purpose use. And you can, basically utilize almost double the storage space in some of these, situations.
Yeah, so we have 14.1 feet. He has 10 cubic feet. So huge frunk on that thing.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen some of the vehicles like the Cadillac Lyriq, I think, didn't have a frunk at all, which was massively disappointing to me. I mean, it's a huge opportunity, and they put technology and stuff to fill in that void. But even with like the Cybertruck, we've seen some of the images now where they're actually showing it. Yeah. It's not really that much storage, which I mean, that's just a funky shape vehicle.
Well, you do have the back that gets covered with that big V, so you could shove stuff in the back. I'm assuming that's what they're looking at, is hey, you really don't need it if I give you all of that square footage in this trunk that's covered and lockable.
But there's some of them that you've seen, even with like Teslas and stuff, they kind of keep a narrow little hole in the center that it's still storage, but having 10 cubic feet, 14 cubic feet, I mean, that makes a huge difference with your drive experience and, the practicality of being able to haul stuff around.
Speed. So you had the performance model. What is the difference between the two? Obviously, it's much quicker than our trucks and vehicles I've been in. What is the difference for you? And do you drive it like that often, or is that something that you have if you need it, or do you burn the tires off of what you have?
I drive my car. I think I'm more aggressive than most. It would be a serious waste of money if I did not. But the difference between the performance and the Grand Touring is noticeable, particularly when you're driving back to back. And the suspension is too different for the performance model. So 0 to 60, I think, is in 2.6 seconds in the performance, and then 3 seconds flat in the Grand Touring. But more like a feel or subjective feel. My sprint mode, which utilizes the full horsepower, I think 890 horsepower in the Grand Touring model, was like the smooth and swift mode, which only utilizes, I think they say those modes use only 2/3 of the horsepower. So in the performance model, like I said, smooth and swift were like my sprint mode. So that was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, and then obviously if you step up to the Sapphire, then you're going from 2.8 to 1.8 on the performance, which I mean, your face has to be almost melting off on that one when it comes to the launch. I mean, I've taken so many people around in my truck that goes 3.9, and they're talking about feeling a blood rush. I mean,
could you imagine it?
A 1.8. I mean, that's one of the, for me, I mean, the Lucid Air Sapphire is a target. I would love to have one, or at least be able to drive one around for a little while. But I mean, obviously it comes with a massive price tag, but I mean, even with your vehicle going,
same as
3 seconds, well, 3 seconds flat, I mean, that's still 25% better than what we have.
Yeah. For about the same money too.
Yeah.
I mean, and it sounds like the room is there. I mean, obviously we got a bed in ours, so that's a little different, but, when you add a trunk, we don't have a lockable trunk and a frunk on the front, plus the interior's probably got more square footage on the interior of his vehicle than
and in my opinion, I mean, out of all of the regular sedan cars out there, I think the Lucid is one of the sharpest looking EVs on the road. We saw one driving to Nashville.
Might have been him.
It could have been. But we were driving to Nashville. We saw a Lucid on the road, and I slowed down, sped up, passed it, looked front and back. I mean, it's just a really sharp looking.
It actually might have been, because we think it had a dealer tag or a weird tag on it, and it was that darker purple, or had like a purplish color to it.
The maroon color.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
But yeah, I mean the Lucid in general, just with the way they did their lighting package and the shape of it, I think that they've done a very good job at that luxury look. Even at the lower trim models, I think it's a very sharp looking vehicle.
now, fit and finish and everything on the interior. Obviously, you have one of the very early models, kind of like Josh and I. We have within the we were under 3,500, I believe, for both of our trucks were the first up to 3,500 that were produced, similar to your car. We've had a few fit and finish things we've had to kind of get worked on to get fixed. Nothing major. So on yours though, is it very similar since it's a new car company and they're into it, or have not done that in the past, or do you feel like that's something they've really addressed and the engineering was put into place first when they built it?
So the interior has been spot on. So we've only had two issues, right? So the hood was misaligned ever so slightly on the front, and it broke a piece of trim and chipped some paint on the side, which they all fixed under warranty. So that was the first one on the exterior, but everything else looks good, right? It all closes nicely. There's no loud wind noise coming through. Some more owners have reported, but we're a minority, right? And then I think interior-wise, the only thing that I've had is the slightest rattle in my driver's door, which I think is a broken clip, which they'll fix under warranty as well. I just haven't had time to do it. So, I mean, two issues for, practically a brand new car manufacturing company.
Nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Yesterday, I took my truck through a car wash, and my headboard started dripping water because there's a leak in the sunroof. So I have to take my truck over to Ford. I think it's just the drain tube or something that got jarred. I'm not sure, but I got to take it to get looked at. But I mean, you're all bound to have little issues here and there, and that's what that initial warranty kind of helps you cover. But I mean, it seems like overall Lucid's done. I haven't heard much complaints in regards to Lucid in that space, and
Yeah,
hopefully because it's an upper echelon price vehicle, that would be the case.
Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say a big part of it was they started producing right in the middle of the supply chain issues. So the parts that they had to source were maybe not exactly what they wanted. And I think according to their investor speech for last quarter is that they burned through most of that inventory and will be done with it in the next quarter or two. So, their manufacturing costs are going to lower.
Yeah.
And then the parts are better, which is what those of us on the forum have noticed, is that all the new owners, their cars have been perfect and without an issue, I would say 97% of the time. So the parts, door handles weren't always working or whatever it may be. They've completely upgraded or replaced those parts in their manufacturing process already.
Good.
Which is nice.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Now, my truck and Josh's truck both are around 2.1 kilowatts per mile, I think is how it calculates it.
And my lifetime average is 2.3.
Yeah, mine's like 2.1 to 2.
Because you're a maniac. But yeah, I mean, what type of efficiency are you seeing with your driving experience?
Let's see. Well, so I had the 21-inch tires for the longest time. And we were in the middle of the winter when we did most of our driving. So that was about 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour.
Wow.
Going 80 plus. I won't say how high we cruise on the interstate, but it's up
Close
there.
course.
And then for the performance model, I think there's a lot more around town driving. So I dropped it all the way to 2.6 as the lifetime average because I drove it like I saw it.
Yeah.
But still,
that's high. 3.1 is high.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of the smaller vehicles like Tesla and stuff would get that efficiency, but I mean that's part of. What is the range of your vehicle that you have, the Grand Touring?
So 469 miles for the 21-inch wheels, 516 for the 19-inch wheels, and you could achieve, I would say, reasonably if you followed interstate speed limits, anywhere between 85 to 90% of that. All things considered.
So when you took your road trip and you were coming up through Bristol, I mean, obviously you were in the other, the performance edition, but how far were you getting on if you started at 100%, how far would you get on that first charge? Would it be 400, 420?
Or, well, the way I was driving it, we were probably getting close to 300. Right.
That's some way.
If I drove it normally, we could have probably eked out 380 plus. But for reference, we went from Huntsville to Kodak, Tennessee, just to top off, and then I think it was Bristol was our last stop.
Yeah.
And then we drove all the way up to Snowshoe on one charge.
Oh, okay. I know exactly the route you took. Okay.
Yeah. Which is mountains, so you had elevation gain, so we lost 80 miles of range from elevation gain, and we still rolled in with, I'd say, 70 plus miles of range.
And then going down the mountain, of course, you gain, so.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. I mean, we've seen with our trucks, I mean, it's average, it advertises 320 is the truck, extended range battery range. But I'm seeing on the highway, we'll get 260, 270, and that's going 5 to 7 over on average. If it's Jesse, then he gets like 200. He's a maniac.
No, I don't think I've got that low on mine. I've been around 250.
But I mean, we have 130 usable kilowatts of energy, and we're getting 2 miles a kilowatt pretty much. On the highway, it's 2 to 2.1. So, I mean, easy math there. You're getting 260, 270.
And when you look at the amount of room that the Lucid has, other than the length of the bed, which you can hook a trailer up to his vehicle and then pull that if you needed that for the 4 or 5 times.
Then your range drops.
Yeah, but for the 4 or 5 times, you might need to haul something that long. But from a standpoint of just materials, it's got plenty of room. Now, one thing I did find out, because I was kind of curious about it. So the highest EV right now is a 2001 or 2021 Model 3 is the highest efficiency of any EV, and it gets an average of 4.17 miles per kilowatt hours, which is pretty impressive on that. But again, that's a very base model. That's not a performance, and that's not a luxury, so you don't have the weight of that extra.
The less tech you put in it, and the less features, and obviously, the lighter the weight, then obviously you're going to get better efficiency out of it.
And it says a lot of the other averages for them is between 3.3 and 4.1. So, that one fits on the lower end of that, but that's still so much further than what.
And on my average daily driving around town with my truck, I'm getting 3.
I've never been into 3s.
I mean, I commute to work and back every day, and my office is about 15 miles away from my house.
I guess that way you could.
So on the way there, 15 miles there, I get about 2.3 to 2.5, and on the way back, every single time, 4 to 4.1. So I mean, you average that together on the commute there and back in that 30-mile, there and back commute, I'm getting probably about 3.2. But obviously on the highway, then I'm seeing 2, which is kind of where my lifetime average ends up at 2.3. So
this car is supposed to get 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour with the 19-inch wheels. And so that would be higher than the Model 3. So that might be real world numbers.
I think that's what this is.
But I mean, 500 mile range on any vehicle. I mean, that's
stupid.
Yeah, that there is. I don't think that there's any other vehicle in the market that's currently going north of 500 except for Lucid. That's widely distributed, unless I'm mistaken. But all the Teslas and everything are in the low 400s. But I mean, that's the one thing about the Plaid, or about the Lucid in general, is just that, they've done a very good job at offering all the amenities. I mean, it comes with a price, obviously, but offering all the amenities, and then, still having more range than any other competitive vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at even the base price and the EPA versions of all the Lucids, you only have one of them you have a few that is in the 300 range, 380s. But most of them are over 500, and I don't see anything for the Lucid Air Sapphire on here. So they've not told us what it will do. But
they released an official announcement, press release that the free they do, or they had their one announcement to that. The Sapphire is going to have 1,234 horsepower, so that's a little bit of a marketing gimmick, but and it's supposed to have 436 miles of range.
Oh wow, that's a lot for that much power. Of course, if you're driving like you or I would, it probably wouldn't be that much range. But I would tend to use 1,000 horsepower if I had it.
Yeah,
the only thing better than 1,000 horsepower is 2,000 horsepower.
Any vehicle, car, truck that can get 500-mile range and then charge fast, I think is going to be something that is targeted. And kind of going back into the pricing conversation, I think you're going to see a gigantic increase in appeal to the EV space when, one, the infrastructure comes in and it's more readily available than it is currently. But two, when you start to see vehicles that are affordable, let's just put them under the range that qualifies for the federal tax credit of so under 80,000, you're getting all these more vehicle models that can go 500 miles and charge at 250 kilowatt, delivered range 300. Then all of a sudden you have a big use case for a vehicle that the average person can use. They could stop for 15 minutes, have enough charge to keep going. And I think that's the next, big step is we have to get, battery tech to a point that the price will be affected because, like we said at the beginning, I think the Lucid might be one of the only ones that has that type of range that is relatively affordable. But, there's no other $50,000 EV that goes more than 300 miles.
Yeah, I think that's the big key is how can you get it in the 30s, the 50s, like the Model 3 originally was supposed to be before the cost kind of hit them. Because I know people that even got a Model 3 at that price range. They got as soon as it was available, they got it, and they were able to buy it at that price. So they got a very good deal in what they had, but now there isn't anybody that way. And I don't see anybody in the future in the next couple of years that's even looking to produce one. I know Ford doesn't have anything in that. I like to see the Ford Festiva hitting that because you can kind of think that's what the Festiva was originally designed for. But even at that, you got a small Festiva. What if you did do this to it? Now you're still looking at $35,000 for a very small compact car that might be able to pack 250, 300 mile range at the best in its batteries. So yeah, you still run into that problem of how much storage of power can you get and then the energy it takes to move it versus petrol gas powered vehicles. And the calculations still are very difficult until technology changes, I believe.
No. There is the Hyundai Ioniq 6.
Oh, yeah, forgot about that one. Yeah, we talked to somebody a few weeks ago about that one. Forgot about that one. Yeah, it's how much was that one? 35?
It starts at 42. I looked it up.
Okay.
Well, we were talking, and that gives you, I think, the 270 miles of range. And then, but if you go up for, I think it's only another $5,000 or so, you get the 360 mile range version. And I test drove that car. It's a very nice car for the price point. And if let's just say if I was in a different financial position and I couldn't afford a Lucid, that would have probably been a pick.
Yeah.
Now I don't have a front, but driving, handling, performance, it's got a little bit of pep and it's got enough range to get you to places.
Yeah.
Not inconveniently.
And then by the time you take your $7,500 credit off of that, you're going to be down in the, $3,950 for the upper model or $34,000 for the lower model. So, all that car for under $40,000 plus tax and everything wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah, I mean, new vehicles, you're going to expect to pay 35 plus. And an EV that's going to have the lifetime gas savings. And like we discussed towards the beginning was, the overall expense and maintenance savings. That's something that I don't see a problem with there being 40 to 60,000 kind of being like the window that you're seeing the EVs in. But that's something that, the battery range, I think there's a use case in urban areas to have the lower mileage range, just for a lot of the regional mobility. But, when it comes to vehicles that people intend to drive
or rural areas. Yeah. We drive a lot.
Yeah.
So.
We have to drive a lot of miles, but I don't like that I only can get 320 miles of range. And it was more than a lot of the other vehicles. And, you know, it was decent for a truck in the EV space. But I 100%, and I've told this over and over again.
The only truck was in the EV space.
But really, as of right now, the highest that you're going to see is the $100,000 Silverado.
I think Silverados are on the road. They'll be coming out. I don't think
they're 400, 420.
I think, they're 400 is their range, but I don't see them. I don't think they're out yet. And
the Sierra is going to be 450.
I don't remember. I think it's also 400.
Yeah,
because I have that one.
But those are 200 kilowatt battery packs. So charging is going to take longer.
Or 220 on some of them. I think the Hummer was 220 or 240. I can't remember. So
I mean that's something where I think that we need to see, you know, a Lucid Air type, you know, setup where you're having that high level of efficiency. Obviously, when you get to the bigger vehicles like trucks and things, you're going to have a larger battery. And
if they can come out with a crossover using the technology that they currently have, and then have a, you know, that $50,000 price range, I think that's also what Rivian is looking at too. That smaller version that they've announced. So
because we are downing the, you know, the expense of the EV in general, but I mean, for me, as you know, having doing real estate, you know, as a career, I was spending, you know, especially when gas prices were up at $4.50, I was spending, you know, $500 a month on gas. And right now my electric bill's up, you know, basically $75 a month. So I'm net saving, let's just say easy math, $400 a month. But, you know, that means over the last 12 months of owning that vehicle, I've saved $5,000. Well, if I own this vehicle for 5 years, I've saved $25,000 in gas costs, not including the maintenance, which if we're looking at the maintenance and it's another $25,000, I've saved almost the cost of the vehicle in gas and maintenance. And so replacing the limited infrastructure, which is just batteries, to increase my longevity with that vehicle, you know, I don't think that it's that far off, but we need longer range with higher efficiency, which I think comes with battery tech evolution.
So it's called the Rivian R2. That's their smaller SUV that's supposed to be out in 2026.
Do they have a range on that?
It doesn't have a range, no. Not that I've seen. I'm sure
Gravity,
they announce it.
Yeah, and the Lucid Gravity might be a reasonable option. Now it's kind of truck, but it's, I don't know where you classify a 7-seater. It's not quite a minivan, but not quite maybe more of a SUV in terms of space. That might be an interesting option for folks if we're looking at things like the R1S.
Yeah.
But put the prices up there, right? It's going to be a $90,000, $100,000 probably base start. It's what most of us are guessing, but we'll see in 2 months.
Yeah, and I think that the Gravity is going to be a unique one. The curiosity be, well, where will the Gravity land on price? But
right.
How much was it? Because I remember seeing it. It looked good.
My guess is you're probably going to see 100,000 on that.
Oh, every bit of it. Yeah, it looks good. But yeah, 7-seater, you know, I mean, but at the same time, that's what the Telluride we have is. It's a 7-seater. Yeah. So, you know.
But you can get that for 50 decked out.
Yeah, 55, I think, was ours. So, yeah. And it's decked completely out. I mean, it was ready to go versus this. It's probably going to be over 100,000. Looks good, though. I like the look of it.
Yeah.
But.
Well, Jacob, what, if you had anything, would be your next aspirational vehicle? Would it be another Lucid, or do you have another one that you have your eyes set on?
I got my eyes set on the Sapphire. but my wife says I owe her a house.
It's an investment, honey. Tell her it's an investment, honey. I have to buy it. You know, it's on sale. So look, all the money I'm saving you.
Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see Lucid respond to Tesla's price drops across the board. Maybe they'll come down.
They did come down on every. Lucid recently had a pretty good price drop on.
But I don't think the Lucid Sapphire is below 250 still.
No,
I can.
That's going to be at 250.
Yeah,
that's going to stay.
I mean, that's just a niche luxury car that people aren't going to buy because it's 230 instead of 250. But yeah, I mean, that's Sapphire. I'm pulling it up. But yeah, I mean the Sapphire is
definitely. Yeah, it's a good looking car.
Yeah,
I like it.
And for the speed, yeah, it's still 250. But it looks like the Air Pure is now starting at 82.4. The Air Touring starts at 95. The Grand Touring starts at 125, and the Sapphire is 249 flat. That has everything on it. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see kind of where Lucid goes and where how Lucid targets their future. Like I said, I had seen somebody that works at Lucid had made a comment or had shared something talking about. I just pulled it up.
Was it Aaron?
Electric, yeah. So I mean, they were targeting basically a $50,000 EV, kind of right at the Model 3, Model Y territory. And that was, you know, a shared post from a Lucid representative. And so, I mean, I think that we're going to see some more affordable Lucid options, but for what they are, I mean, I think that it's a very impressive car company. So,
and imagine the price drop, right? If you took out the Napa leather or any kind of leather and put cloth and harder plastic like a Hyundai, you know, it may very well be reasonable that they could drop the price from even the $80,000 for the Pure to, you know, maybe 60. I don't know how much interiors cost.
Yeah. And I mean, the question is, I mean, with manufacturing, if they can become more efficient now, like you had said, now that they're able to kind of control the manufacturing a little bit more than, you know, when they launched, maybe that will help them kind of control pricing more. That, you know, now that we're seeing a downtick on some of the inflation of some of those, you know, importable goods. But, you know, I think that if you look at vehicles that are, you know, competition, like we were just discussed with the Telluride, you can get Napa leather, heads-up display. You can get all the bells and whistles for features and still be under $60,000 for a decked-out gas vehicle. And obviously, I think that the electric is going to cost more. But, you know, can we find a world in which, whether that's through battery cost reduction or through dealer, they figure out a way to make it more efficient in the production of it.
Yeah, that's what Ford's looking at for theirs, and obviously Tesla is doing a lot of work on their side as well. So I think Ford's kind of, I'm not going to say copy because they all work together from what we understand, but I think a lot of this large scale part single molding and single unit production is definitely a way to go on these platforms and these surfboards, I guess, of what you would call it for.
And if they can make it more efficient, then maybe that's a world in which we can start to see the price drop. I mean, Tesla has been working on the efficiencies of their systems, and we're seeing, I mean, I had seen some reviews. I mean, the price drops that Tesla's had on some of their higher end models at the beginning of this year, they were charging $110,000, and now they're charging $80,000. So somebody who bought their Tesla product in January paid over $100,000 for their vehicle, and less than 9 months later, they're buying the same vehicle for $80,000.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think that's more just the production numbers ramping up, and now you can charge less. They probably could have charged everybody that $100,000.
But imagine if other car manufacturers could have that type of price drop in their vehicle lineup.
Absolutely.
I mean, $100,000 for the top trim down to $80,000.
Was that for the Model S?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but I mean, it all of a sudden became a tremendous amount more affordable to buy the higher end trims. Because upper end trim costing $80,000 makes sense.
It might be that they were competing with the Lucid now that it was out too, you know. So,
but now Lucid has the ball in their court because their lowest model costs more than
So
other than the Plaid, it costs more than their highest model.
Yeah, I love the Plaid too. I like to drive one of those. But anyway, so closing remarks, Josh. Anything that you want to add?
I think that pricing is something that needs to be discussed. You know, if we're going to look at global and nationwide adoption of EVs and, you know, encourage that adoption more, we have to make EV more affordable to the average user. That comes through battery tech. That comes through, you know, manufacturing efficiency, which there's a lot of incentives coming out for manufacturing efficiency. I think literally 2 days ago, there was another $15 billion towards car manufacturing that came out to improve their systems. But if we can see a world in which those things improve, costs go down, and then we can have a well-priced vehicle that lands between 40 and 65 to 70, then it's a world in which, as this infrastructure comes out, we'll see EV adoption, you know, ramp up on a larger scale.
Worst case, they spend all that money and it doesn't help anything. So.
Jacob, give us your final thoughts.
I mean, I don't have much other than, when people look at electric cars, we talked about maintenance a little bit, but redoing the idea of maybe buying a car every 5 years, the real cost savings come after you drive the car 100,000 plus miles, right?
Yeah.
And so that's definitely something to consider for people looking into the electric space. You're never going to get your money back out of it or break even unless you're willing to drive the car longer, at least where the prices are now. And that's probably a whole different conversation, but that's my closing thought.
And I think that is also the comes down to the insurance part. I'm warranted right now up to 75,000 miles. So obviously I don't have any concerns up to 75,000, but if I could add a warranty, so say for $5,000, that is going to take that from 75,000, say to 150,000, I would probably spend the $5,000 to do that, because like you said, that's what, 5 car payments, and that 5 car payments means at the end of it, you have that support or that trust that you don't have to pay $20,000 or $30,000 for a battery or whatever it is. So it might just come into a better system of guaranteeing that can be paid for. And I would take mine all the way as far as I could go if that was the case. So until I traded in for something else.
Just as a side note, I just looked it up. Tesla Plaid, brand new, cost
$135.
$90,000.
Wow. Okay.
That's how much they've dropped it. $90,000. Anyways. Okay. Alrighty. Well, that's been another episode of Turn Down for What. Thank you so much, Jacob, for tuning in today and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you so much, and tune in next week. Once again, if you are watching us on YouTube, you can subscribe, like the video. We will have this every week on YouTube to watch, but then we're on all streaming platforms.
Probably going to be on X soon. We need to figure out how to put it on X.
Yeah.
So,
and we also have a website, Turn Down for What, WATT, podcast.com. Check us out. Thank you.
Thank you.